everyone. It looks like most people are signed in, so we'll get started. Welcome to Securing the Bag. My name is Giovanni Castro, an executive committee member with FIU Young Alumni Network, and I'm looking forward to hearing from today's incredible speaker along with all of you. Before we get started, I want to take care of some housekeeping items. We recommend using speaker view, not gallery view, for the best results. Participant microphones will be disabled during the presentation. We've scheduled time for Q&A after the presentation, but please feel free to drop your question in the chat box in the meantime, and I'll make sure the speakers get it. If you need help at any time, please message the meeting host through the chat box for assistance. Without further ado, I'm happy to introduce my friend and our presenter, Pablo Martinez. Pablo Martinez is an investment professional with experience in commercial real estate acquisitions, asset management, dispositions, budget, and strategy. He's currently an investment associate at ESJ Capital Partners, a real estate private equity firm in Aventura, Florida. His duties include the evaluation and execution of commercial real estate acquisitions, asset management, and dispositions. His prior roles include finance analyst at Florida East Coast Industries, budget analyst at the City of Coconut Creek, and the budget analyst at the City of Hollywood. Mr. Martinez holds a bachelor's in business administration from Florida International University in finance and an MBA in finance from Nova Southeastern University. Without further ado, Pablo, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Give me a moment, please. I'm going to share my screen. All right, great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon. And Gio, thank you very much for the introduction. As Gio said, my name's Pablo, and let's get right into securing the bag. So first goals for this session. We want to gain some knowledge on personal finance and how to create your own budget, ways to take immediate action to improve your finances, and learning how to calculate, monitor, and grow your net worth. So budgeting 101, the who, what, when, and why of budgeting. Who should budget? Everyone, hopefully. What is a budget? Budget's a plan on how to spend your money. It's setting targets for the future. When should you budget? ASAP. So the sooner you budget, the sooner that you have your finances in order, and the sooner you could start taking advantage of the power of compound interest. And why should you budget? So many reasons. You build good habits, you get rid of bad spending habits, you're ready for emergencies, you never know when there's going to be a rainy day. For me, I sleep better at night knowing that my finances are in order. So there's many reasons to budget and be on top of your finances. So before we jump into budgeting, I want to talk about the 50-20 rule. The 50-20 rule states basically that you should spend 50% of your income on needs, 30% of your income on wants, and 20% on savings, debt payments, and investments. So this is a general rule of thumb for when you're first starting your budgeting. I want to spend a little bit more time on the needs versus wants, because this is something that many of us struggle with. Deciding on something that is a want, is a need, even though it's actually a want. So needs are going to be everything that you need to survive, everything you're going to need to get to work. So that's clothing, housing, transportation, food, and wants are going to be everything else, basically. It's going to be your Netflix. It's going to be your eating out. You're going to the movies. All of those things that you don't actually need. And so people have a hard time with that because people will think, hey, I need internet access. You may not need it. It may not be a need. For most of us, it's not. So, that's distinguishing needs versus wants. It's tough, but you really have to do it, and you have to be strict with it when you're budgeting. So next, we're going to go into an example of budgeting. So what you're seeing here is a personal budget. This is taking Florida's average household income of $55,000 and assuming that after tax that is $45,000. And this is using this as the example. So this person has their income, and it's here over on the left. So that's the first step, is going to be just taking your income. And in order to do this, obviously, you're going to need all of your financial statements, your bank statements, your credit card statements, your mortgage, everything related to your finances. You're going to need all of that first. So you take that and you first you get your income. And if you have multiple sources of income, it's always best to take your stable income as is. And then for your variable income, like if you have a gig job, a side hustle where you don't know how much money you're making, then you should be conservative with it. So if a good day is a good month is gonna make you $500, for example, and a bad month is $100, then you should budget for the $100, and everything that you make above that you can save. So first you take that income. Next, the hardest part is taking all of your expenses and splitting them up into your wants versus your needs. So in this case, you can see here that there's half of your expenses are in green and the other half are in pink. The green is your needs and the pink is your wants. So in this particular example, they're adhering to the 50-30-20 rule, which is the 50% needs, 30% wants, 20% savings. So this part in particular, the monthly expenses, like I said, it can be really tough to distinguish wants versus needs. But you're going to need this, and you're going to need this laid out so that you can make decisions down the road. So for example, right now they're adhering to the rule. However, what if they get an increase to they get into a car accident and they have an increase to their car insurance? Now they have to pay an extra $100 a month. Now all of a sudden they're not going to be following the 80-20 rule, and they need to look at their wants section to determine how they're going to save that extra $100 a month. So in this case, it could be by cutting the cord and getting rid of cable TV, or by eating out for $175 a month instead of $275. So it's important to have your wants and your needs mapped out in this way so that you can continue to monitor your budget throughout. And this budget is a generic Excel template budget that I'm happy to share with anyone who wants to use it as a base at the end of the session. If you don't have Excel, there's a product called OpenOffice that gives you the same functionality, and it's free online. So that's a quick example of your budget, and you can see on the right-hand side that their savings are split into 401k, emergency fund, and IRA, which I would recommend that everyone have an emergency fund, and that you invest everything that you can. So some common best practices for budgeting. First is pay yourself first by making savings, investments, and debt payments automatic. So this is a big one, and this is something that any of us can do right now, is go online, set up automatic savings, automatic investments. Your debt payments generally probably are automatic, but make sure that they are. This is, if you're saving $50 a month, you may decide to save $100 a month, but this is something that you can all do right now. Pay yourself first. It's a great habit for anyone, regardless of where you are in your budgeting journey. Next, build an emergency fund. Generally, it's recommended to have 3 to 6 months of expenses, which I know can be a lot for many of us. So my suggestion is to come up with a number that works for you. Maybe that number is $500, maybe that number is $1,000, but have an emergency fund, establish one, and keep it growing over time. So for me, it was $1,000, and I started there, and now I'm at that 3 months expenses. And eventually, when I have a family, I plan on having 6 months. So that's definitely another good common best practice. Third, pay off any credit cards in full each month. I know myself, I started off with credit card debt, and over time I paid that off, and now I'm in the habit of paying my credit cards off in full every month. And for some of us that takes time, but it's very important to get there, because that will really set you up for success. And last, review and readjust your budget monthly. So as I mentioned before, having your expenses mapped out as wants versus needs is going to be really helpful with that when things come up that you don't expect, or when you're planning for the future. So continue to look at your budget, continue to readjust. You're going to continue to build good habits as you're budgeting, and you're going to continue to improve your budget over time. So make sure that you continue to regularly review and readjust your budget. So now that you have your budget, let's talk about net worth. So this is the other major piece to your personal finances. Net worth is basically the dollar amount that you are worth in financial, from a financial perspective. So your net worth should be growing over time. It should be something that you track and monitor as soon as you can, and continue to grow. Net worth is debt versus equity, or what you own versus what you owe. So it's going to be more specifically your assets minus your liabilities. What are assets? Assets are simply everything that you own that is worth something, that is worth a dollar amount. So that can be your cash in your bank account. That can be the home that you live in. That can be your retirement accounts. It could be a combination of things, but all these things add up to become your assets. And that is going to be the positive side of your net worth, with the negative side being your liabilities. That's your mortgage, your student loans, your car loans, anything that you owe that you need to pay back. And they combine to give you your net worth. And a really, really good tool for this. I love this website. I've used it since I was in my early 20s, for maybe 8 years now. It's an incredible website. It's called Personal Capital. It's a, here, I'm going to show you an example of the website dashboard while I explain. So, and this particular example is an individual who's amassed a $350,000 net worth. And it shows you here, you know, how you get to that point. The assets minus the liabilities that we talked about earlier. And then below that, you have all the different categories that add up to your net worth. So you have your cash, which is all your bank accounts, investments, the 401k, retirement account, IRA, etc. You have credit cards, and it goes down further, where you have your loans, student loans, mortgages. And in addition, it has other assets, other liabilities. It has your house. So if you own your home, you put in the address, and with Zillow, the Zillow estimate, they will give you the estimated value of your home as an asset. So it basically, you set it up by syncing all these accounts. You put in your Chase info, you put in your mortgage info, you put in everything, and it automatically updates it for you in real time. So you can always track exactly where you are from a net worth perspective. You have that in real time whenever you check Personal Capital. It's an amazing app. I swear by it. It works really, really well. As you can see in the center here, this net worth chart, this is what I probably spend the most time. The first thing I look at really when I go to Personal Capital is to see how I'm doing. It'll show you a 90-day trend of how your finances how your net worth has changed over time. So, and you can adjust it. You can look at your last 2 years, your last month, whatever the case may be. So it's really great as a tool to give you a general idea of where your finances are going. So I'll tell you my experience with Personal Capital was not quite like this. So when I started and I put in everything, I discovered that my net worth was actually negative. I didn't really think, I thought it might have been around zero. No, but it was really negative. I had a lot of student loans, I had car debt, etc. So this initially, my big milestone was getting to $0 net worth. And it was a really exciting time for me. And from then on, getting to 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, etc. Milestone after milestone has been a really good motivator. Having this, using this app is something that was probably my biggest motivator in continuing to have these good habits. So this website, it's also an app, is amazing. I highly recommend it. And best of all, it's free. So by all means, check it out. Personal Capital, it's amazing. It also has budgeting tools. As you can see here, this person is it shows you their budget. They're 5,800 out of 8,000 is what they're spending. They give you suggestions on how to invest your retirement funds. It's just overall meant to encompass all of your personal finances, and I highly recommend it. So yeah, Personal Capital, great website. So key takeaways for the session. First, create that budget and readjust it regularly. It's very first step, and it'll be something that it'll continue to help you throughout as you adjust over time. The 50-30-20 rule, as I mentioned earlier, 50% needs, 30% wants, and 20% savings and debt payments. Again, that is just a barometer, a baseline initially. My recommendation is that you save more than 20% if you can. It's going to be based obviously on your own personal situation, but the more you save, the better. Pay yourself first. As I mentioned, do those autopilot savings. Increase them if you can. If you have any room, do that. That is a great habit, and it's something you can do right now. And fourth, monitor your net worth. Like I said, give Personal Capital a try. I highly recommend it. And like I said, it's free. You have nothing to lose. It's a very secure website. So far, I've had no issues. I've recommended it to many people, and I highly recommend it. So, yeah, those are the key takeaways. And now, thank you all for having me. I'm going to switch over to the Q&A and answer any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Pablo. I think this was very useful information for our participants. We have about 15 minutes or so for you to answer some questions, and we received some through the chat. And I'll start with Richard Sanchez. He asked, how should I budget if I have two income streams where one is my 9-to-5 and the other is more difficult to predict?
Okay. So, yeah, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but more specifically, if you have that difficult to predict job, you need to be conservative. The best way to do it is to look at your history. Let's say you've had this job for the past year, and it's been up and down, but your income has ranged from $100 to $500 over each month. In that particular case, I would be conservative and budget for $100 or something close to that, maybe $150, but I wouldn't go much over the minimum, because then when you're budgeting, you're going to be expecting that money. So it's important to understand that if you're conservative, you won't have any issues. But if you bank on that money and then you don't get it, it could be an issue. So always be as conservative as you can and use a lower number.
Thank you. Giancarlo Rodriguez asks, what should my average net worth be by age 30 and 40?
Oh man, that completely depends on you. So it depends on the income that you have, your personal situation. Some of us have, much higher expenses than others, but the important thing is not to have one specific number that you must meet because you're 30 or because of your age, but rather understanding that you need to have the right habits in order to increase your net worth progressively, so that you can cover for a rainy day, and also so that you can retire comfortably and or early. But to answer, if you want a specific number, I would just say, rather than plan on 1 year, like being 30 and having a net worth of, let's say, $100,000, to instead say, I'm starting this financial journey today. So 1 year from now, I expect my net worth to increase by, let's say, $20,000. 2 years from now, I expect it to increase by $50,000. Whatever the number may be, have these goals and try to meet these goals. Make realistic goals, make long-term goals of what you want your net worth to be based on your own personal circumstance. And you will succeed at getting that net worth, that number that that works for you. I can't give you one specific number because it kind of depends on you.
That was very well said. Thank you. Vignesh Dorswamy asks, any keys to getting rid of credit card debt, especially since you went through it yourself? It's a great question.
Yeah. Well, pay yourself first, like I mentioned before. You need to make it your priority to pay off these credit cards. This is something that the interest rates on these cards, we're talking about 20+% at times. It's something that you need to tackle first. And the way to do that is, in part, the way that I mentioned before, where you look at all of your expenses and you make them needs, you make them wants, you categorize them so that you can then take those wants, and instead of buying yourself that going out to dinner that one night and spending that $100, you instead spend it on credit cards. But again, if you don't take that time to categorize your expenses, you won't be able to figure out how much more you can pay into credit cards every month.
Thank you, Pablo. Lordana asks, how do you budget for big life transitions, i.e. moving for a new job after graduation?
Moving for a new job after graduation. Well, if you're not lucky enough to have like a relocation or anything like that, like most of us, the answer to that is really your emergency fund. And it's something that we should all have. We should all be ready for, if my car breaks down, if I'm moving, if I have a family emergency, if all of these things, these are all covered by your emergency fund. So the answer is really save up for that emergency fund. As a very, very last resort, you should be using credit cards. But it's something that, it may be necessary as well, right? Like if you don't have the means to save up for that emergency fund, let's say you need 10 grand to relocate, then you would need to find some creative way to do it, knowing, for example, if you know that you will have the income in the future to offset the expenses that you currently have, then maybe it is wise to use a credit card, knowing that you'll pay it off, especially nowadays. There's so many 0% interest credit cards initially that it may be wise to use a credit card in the meantime. It just depends on your circumstance. But generally, first resort should be your emergency fund.
Robert Iglesias asks, what are some easy investment opportunities do you think someone should take advantage of?
Easy investment opportunities someone should take advantage of. So easy is really the stock market, right? Anything else is probably going to require, a little bit more research, a little bit more. So my recommendation is put more money into stocks, bonds, into investments in general. That's the only real easy answer. And that's what most of us do, whether that's through our 401k, et cetera. Sometimes our employers do it for us. But that's what I would suggest is if you, and I guess while we're on the topic, if you have a 401k, max that out if you can, and then IRA, and then use a regular brokerage account like Vanguard or Fidelity. But yeah, the answer is invest in the market, right? I would suggest total stock market, indexes, mutual funds, because any individual stocks are going to be very high risk, and that's more of a case-by-case thing.
I guess pivoting in the investment point, Melanie asked, at what point net worth-wise do you suggest is a good amount to invest in your first property?
I'm going to assume that this is a property that you want to live in, as opposed to an investment property. I guess to answer your question, the answer about whether or not you should buy a house to move into rather than rent isn't really about what your net worth is. The answer is really, is it the right decision for me at this point in my life? And generally that's much more important, whether it's, that you're just starting your career, which many of us could be in that position. You generally don't want to buy a house when you're starting your career, because you don't know where you're going to live years from now. You don't know what's going to come next. You don't know how your finances are going to look, or if you're going to keep that job you just got. So the decision about whether or not you should buy a house isn't really about your net worth, but rather about your current circumstances in your life. So yeah, your net worth, whether it's 50,000 or 100,000 or 200,000, shouldn't really dictate that.
That's actually really well said. Ingrid asks, do you have any tips for organizing a budget for starting a small business?
Okay, so I'll use my some of the experience I had from government budgeting to say that it's really you really need to make your dollars stretch as much as you can. So it's something that that is really hard, because when you're starting a small business, generally you're really excited and you want to spend. If you have money, you want to spend it to help your business grow. oh, there's t-shirts I can buy. I'm going to go buy t-shirts or that show my small business name, or buy stickers or whatever the case may be. But the reality is that you need to, from a budgeting standpoint, make sure that you're making the most of your dollars. Make sure that every dollar that you're spending, you are maximizing. So when you think about it that way, is it worth buying a $25 t-shirt to give someone about, for your business? And when you are just starting a brand new, really small business, many times the answer is no. Many times you should be using that money for search engine optimization or for improving the products that you're already trying to sell. So from a budgeting perspective, it's the same approach as the wants versus needs, where you're saying, do I really need this? And then for the wants, it's which of these wants are more important, prioritizing these wants and really taking a step back and being wise about the money that you're spending, because it's all going to come back in the end. Every dollar that you spend, it's just as important as every dollar that you make. So just be as critical on what you're spending as on the money that's coming in, and try to always maximize those dollars.
Absolutely. I knew you gained something from that public sector experience, and we found it. So Danielle Ramo asks, what should be my investing priorities for a beginner?
Investing priorities for beginners. So if you're first starting out, I'm going to assume that you're graduated recently and you have some money and you're trying to figure out how to invest. The answer is really first to see if your employer has a 401k, hopefully a match. That's where I would start investing my money, in your employer 401k. They're generally easier to keep track of, because you don't really have to follow, be that concerned with. So better way to explain it, it's automatic. It's automatic. It's coming straight out of your paycheck. You don't have to worry about it. Sometimes they're even matching your money. It's something that you don't even have to worry about. It's the definition of paying yourself first. So 401k, max it out if you can. Obviously at first that may be tough to do, but that should be a goal. A goal of yours is to max out your 401k. Then after your 401k is investing in a Roth IRA. Anyone who makes under $150,000 and they're just starting their career, that's what I always recommend. Invest in a Roth IRA. It's a way to have a flexible retirement account dollars, and it's a benefit that you'll only have until you're making around $150,000. At that point, Roth IRA is no longer an option, and you would use the traditional IRA. So first, do the 401k, then a Roth IRA, and then last, a regular brokerage account like Vanguard or Fidelity, etc. And for those investment accounts, my recommendation is to invest in index funds or mutual funds. One index fund in particular that I like to recommend because it encompasses the total US stock market is VTSAX. It's a Vanguard Total Stock Market Index, and it's where I actually invest most of my mutual fund and retirement account dollars. It's definitely a safe, all-encompassing investment that's a good baseline to start at.
We definitely have a lot of experience in budgeting and investments due to your current role. And Carolina would like to know, what are some budgeting techniques you use now that you wish you would have applied when you were a student or recent graduate?
Man, this always makes me go back. Just thinking about this makes me go back to when I first graduated and I first got a regular salary paycheck. And I knew the amount that I should be getting, but once it actually hit my bank account, I was so excited because I was like, man, I'm not rich, but it sure feels like I'm rich. I'm going to go get a nice car. I'm going to go buy these people gifts. I'm going to go do this and that. And you quickly realize that your money is not, that your money, especially if you're not budgeting, it disappears very quickly when you at least it did for me. So I would, if I could go back in time, I would have applied that 50-30-20 rule day one before I got that car. So
it's definitely a philosophy to live by. hang on, we have a couple more questions here. Rick Sanchez would like to know, any rules on emergency fund? How much should be in there?
Yeah, I mentioned it briefly earlier. So for the emergency fund, should be 3 months of expenses. If you have a family or if you have a volatile work situation, I would suggest 6 months. Those are generally recommended sizes for your emergency fund. And but again, I understand that for most of us, 3 months expenses, 6 months expenses is a tremendous amount of money that could take for some of us years to save. So again, my suggestion is find a number that works for you, whether it's $500, $1,000, $2,000, $10,000, whatever that number is. Find that number and start there. And monthly, just add to your emergency fund. This is going to help you from whether your car breaks down or you have a medical emergency, etc. So that would be my suggestion: 3 to 6 months, depending on your situation.
And what was the name of the application you referred to in your presentation for budgeting?
So for budgeting, I was just using Excel, Microsoft Excel. I was using a generic template.
I mean the net worth. I'm sorry. I think because Ruth asked what's the name of the application you were using in the presentation. I think it was the budgeting one.
Yeah. So I was doing that budget with Excel, and then after that, we talked about personal capital. I think that's what he's asking about. So personal capital, it's just a website that is also an app. You can Google it and check it out and sign up. I highly, highly recommend it. Like I said, it's free. So yeah, personal capital, it has budgeting. It's got budgeting. It's got your net worth, which is the very first thing you see. And if you continue to monitor it over time, it'll be a huge motivator moving forward.
So Jennifer Baker would like to know, do you have any favorite finance YouTubers? Dave Ramsey or Budget Girl?
That's funny. I feel like
I know the answer to this question.
I'll be honest. I don't YouTube very much, but I don't even know who Budget Girl is. But I do know who Dave Ramsey is, and his advice is great. It's very, very conservative advice, but it's definitely great advice for most Americans. What I will say is that some of the advice at times can be, may not apply to you in particular. Like if you have a really, really high interest rate debt that has a really high balance, he recommends that you always pay off your smallest loans first. And there are times where paying off your smallest loans first is not going to be the smartest decision, but rather paying off your highest interest rate debt first. So there's going to be advice that you get from different sources that are all going to vary. And you need to, you need to evaluate whether or not that advice is what works for you. I will say that Dave Ramsey if you listen to Dave Ramsey, you're probably already in a great financial place. Just listen. It's good to listen to other similar sources. But yeah, I guess I need to step up my YouTube game because I haven't really followed many YouTube personal finance streamers.
Perfect. Yeah, I think it's just questions about using that Excel format you had in your presentation. I think if anything, we'll leave, I guess, a copy of your presentation to Chelsea, and maybe she can get to the attendees for today, and they can kind of take a look at it. I think that's about it. If you have any other questions, please, feel free to send it in the chat. I think we're pretty good from there. I don't see any other ones. Thank you for the kind words, Ruth, Adriana, Ariana, Stacy, Rob, Vignesh, Gabe, Richard. Thank you all. But I think anybody else has any question, I think we're pretty good.
All right.
Thank you again, Pablo, for your time. I really appreciate it.
All right.